I realize that I haven't been reading the scriptures that I've been commenting on, presuming that everyone knows where to go to get the daily readings or that they have read them themselves already. So I'm not going to assume that anymore. I'm actually just going to go ahead and read them. So let's do what I can. Since I'm principally going to be commenting on the gospel today, I'll just read that. It's from John. Many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what Jesus had done began to believe in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees convened the Sanhedrin and said, "What are we going to do? This man is performing many signs. If we leave him alone, all will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our land and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing, nor do you consider that it is better for you that one man should die instead of the people, so that the whole nation may not perish." He did not say this on his own, but since he was high priest for that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation, and not only for the nation, but also to gather into one the dispersed children of God. So from that day on, they planned to kill him. So Jesus no longer walked about in public among the Jews, but he left for the region near the desert in a town called Ephraim, and there he remained with his disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went up from the country to Jerusalem before Passover to purify themselves. They looked for Jesus and said to one another as they were in the temple area, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast?" Thus far the Holy Gospel. One of the things that we should always consider when we are making choices is whether we are making them out of freedom. And what is a choice out of freedom? Is it merely something that we are conferred by some other authority? We're free if a power above us is strong enough to give us the protection whereby we are free in order to do whatever we want. Well, that doesn't seem right. That seems that we are under just a different form of oppression. So what constitutes freedom? Well, freedom is principally internal. It's about our will, whether our will is constrained by something or not. And this is one of the reasons why we practice the virtues. The virtues are the powers of the soul that help us to be more perfectly human, to express our nature as it ought to be. Sin, or doing wrong, however you want to describe it, is simply acting against that nature. It's acting in a way that is not consistent with what it is to be a human person. We have a type of freedom, a type of sovereignty over our actions so that we can choose against ourselves, choose against our best interests, even choose deliberately what we know to be wrong. Not simply choosing a lesser good, so to speak. We always choose something because we find some good in it, but when we know something is wrong and we choose it, there's a greater deprivation to the act, so to speak. In this gospel, we see that sort of choice going on, a choice that is being made out of some sort of constraint. In this case, it's fear. It's fear that if Christ names himself the Messiah and that he is proclaimed king of Israel, then the Roman overlords are going to come down and destroy them. And they're absolutely terrified about this, and rightly so. Rome was powerful. Rome was sovereign. Rome was virtually undefeated. And the idea that someone could overthrow the Roman authorities, even though it was desired, particularly by the Zealots, but the idea that it could actually be done or resisted without almost everyone being slaughtered, was very small. So it was a real fear. This is not a fake fear. It's not contrived. But it's fear nonetheless. They're making a decision not for the good, There is a good there, the preservation of the people. But they're not making the decision to persecute, to attack our Lord because of the good of preserving people. They're making the decision for fear of the Romans. And that's the wrong way to make a decision. We see this in our lives sometimes. I know parents that they raise their children because they're afraid of the world. And that causes problems. You shouldn't be afraid of something. And that thing being the motivator, that fear being the motivator for the activity. Always find the good. What is the good here? What is the highest good that can be grasped at any moment? And that requires a discerning mind and a pure heart. In order to make those sorts of decisions, we ourselves have to work on virtue, becoming holy, by seeking after the Lord, to live like Him, to exercise the Beatitudes in our life, to follow the commandments of the Lord. If we do that, then we're going to be more ready to see the right path. And the more we choose against the right path, the more it becomes difficult for us to see what is correct. So be virtuous. Don't react to life out of fear, or out of anger, or out of any of those things that we, in our current age, mostly wrongly call a negative emotion. Those emotions that we don't like to feel. We shouldn't make decisions out of those, or even really the positive emotions. We should make decisions because they are good and right and just. To look clearly, to be able to stand back and say, I am not constrained. I am not bound by external forces or the internal forces of my passions run awry.